Hello, everyone. Welcome to our training on the Act 1 of 2022 Graduation Plan Toolkit. My name is Ben Simmons, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Megan Dale. We're both with the Center for Schools and Communities, and we've been working closely with the Pennsylvania Department of Education to support Act 1 implementation across the Commonwealth. Before we dive in, I want you to know that by the end of our time together, you'll leave with everything you need to immediately implement effective graduation planning for your most vulnerable students. This isn't just policy presentation, it's a practical hands-on training that will change how you support students experiencing education instability. We've designed this session to be highly actionable, so you'll leave with templates, rubrics, best practices, and real examples that you can start implementing with today. So let's get started. As I mentioned, my name is Ben Simmons. I serve as the Youth Development Specialist at the Center for Schools and Communities. My work focuses on supporting school entities with Act 1 compliance, as well as other school stability measures, and I'm passionate about ensuring that our most mobile students don't fall through the cracks before graduation. And I'd like to introduce again my colleague, Megan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Dale, and I am the Special Projects Managing Coordinator at the Center for Schools and Communities. In addition to my work with Act 1 of 2022, I also coordinate the Pennsylvania Refugee Education Program here at the Center for Schools in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And like Ben, I'm also passionate about serving our most vulnerable students here in Pennsylvania.
So now that you know who we are, what are we going to cover today? We have three main objectives for this session. First, we're going to provide you with a comprehensive overview of Act 1 of 2022, including what it is, why it matters, and who it protects. Second, we'll walk you through the process of assessing graduation progress and awarding credit. This will include how to recognize prior coursework, award partial credit, and provide alternative assessments when traditional coursework doesn't align. Third and finally, and at the heart of our training today, we're going to introduce you to the Act 1 Graduation Plan Toolkit. We'll do a deep dive into each component of the toolkit, walk through a sample graduation plan together, and show you exactly how to use these resources with your students. By the end of today, you'll have the knowledge, tools, and confidence to create comprehensive graduation plans that truly support timely graduation for Act 1 eligible students. And I'd like to turn it over to Megan now.
Thanks, Ben. So with that, let's get started in part 1 of our training today and discuss the overview and purpose of Act 1 of 2022. Act 1 of 2022 was designed to disrupt negative outcomes associated with education instability, particularly by promoting timely graduation and equitable access to school and extracurriculars for eligible students. And while there are, of course, numerous systemic issues that can impact a student's education journey, including those not listed here, the common causes of education instability that Act 1 recognizes include students experiencing homelessness, as defined by the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Assistance Act, a foster care placement, specifically court-appointed dependency, and juvenile justice involvement or alternative school placements. Namely, students who, under these circumstances, may have their learning interrupted through changes in their school entity. Clarity, students are considered Act 1 eligible if they have had one or more changes to their school entity in a single school year and are identified as one of the following: students experiencing homelessness, as defined by the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Assistance Act, foster care placement, specifically a court-appointed dependency, and juvenile justice involvement or alternative school placements. To counteract education instability, Act 1 is intended to ensure on-time graduation, provide equal access to academic and extracurricular activities, and remove certain systemic barriers for students who have experienced educational instability. Of note, Act 1 does not undermine the rights of students with disabilities or conflict with other state or federal laws. And as we all know, access to an equitable, rigorous, and accessible education is paramount to positive life outcomes for students and the communities in which they live. Research shows that education instability may result in lower rates of on-time school graduation, increased likelihoods of interactions with the juvenile justice system, poorer health outcomes, and feelings of isolation from school and community. Act One encourages us as practitioners to consider the ways in which we might best support our hypermobile and vulnerable students.
So now that we've covered the background and purpose of Act 1 with Megan, let's shift our focus to the practical and implementation side. In this section, we're going to talk about ensuring timely graduation and credit assessment. This is where kind of the rubber meets the road in graduation planning. We'll explore how schools can assess graduation progress, award credits fairly, demonstrate competency through alternative means, and finally develop individualized graduation plans that guide students to graduation. These are the core mechanics of Act 1, the processes that make the law work in practice. Starting with the big picture, we'll be focusing on ensuring timely graduation. Under Act 1, timely graduation doesn't necessarily need to mean graduating in exactly 4 years. Instead, it means graduating at the appropriate time for the individual student, taking into account their unique educational journey and the instability that they've experienced. For some students, this may look different, but for all, it's a two-tiered process. First, begun by assessing graduation progress at the time of enrollment, and then looking for opportunities to meet the needs and fill in potential gaps through graduation planning and developing and recording a unique plan. The key is that we begin by being intentional and proactive. We're not letting students drift through the system, but instead creating a clear path forward and monitoring their progress along the way. In order to ensure timely graduation, school entities must adopt policies and practices to award credits fairly and remove systemic barriers to graduation for eligible students. This is a requirement under the law of Act 1 of 2022. So let me highlight two critical pieces here. First, you'll note cross-credit recognition. This means recognizing that different courses and their titles may represent equivalent coursework. The example we often use is that a mythology course from one school entity might satisfy an English 9 or English literature requirement at another school if the content and standards align. So avoid getting hung up on course titles, instead focusing on the content and learning outcomes. Credit awarding and partial credit calculation is the aspect in which schools must award full or partial credit for work completed at prior schools, including residential placements. This is a huge piece of Act 1 of 2022. If a student completes 3/4 of a biology course before moving, that work counts. Define clearly how partial credits contribute to overall graduation requirements. And importantly, the receiving school's point of contact must verify if previously completed coursework satisfies local graduation requirements. In this, you'll find a deliberate and investigative process, not just rubber stamping a transcript. Now, what happens if a student hasn't completed a specific required course? That's where the demonstration of competency comes in. Students may fulfill graduation requirements in a number of ways, including the completion of required coursework, completing a similar course that could be substituted for credit, or alternative demonstrations of competency. These demonstrations can include the submission of an essay, project, or presentation that shows mastery of content. It could also include recognition of higher-level coursework. For example, if a student took AP biology but never seems to have taken regular biology, that higher level course should count. We can also recognize experiential learning and internships. If a student worked in, say, a veterinary clinic and can demonstrate knowledge of life sciences through that experience, that is competency. We need to think creatively and expansively about how students show what they know. Act 1 also gives school entities significant flexibility in supporting their students experiencing education instability. Chief school administrators, being superintendents or charter school CEOs, may waive a required course or other local graduation requirement. And this is a powerful tool, especially when a student has experienced significant instability and could not reasonably complete every single local graduation requirement by their anticipated graduation date. If a waiver isn't appropriate, schools should provide an alternative or modified course of study to help the student meet the requirements by their expected graduation date. This might mean condensing content, offering summer coursework, or creating a self-paced option. The key question to ask is, how can we modify courses and waive requirements while still upholding academic rigor? We're not lowering the standards, simply creating flexible pathways that meet those standards. Let's talk about the graduation plan itself. According to Act 1, the individualized graduation plan must be included in the student's education record and must also outline local graduation requirements. These are two of the non-negotiables. But the graduation plan should also identify full and partial credits awarded upon enrollment, detail any waived or alternative or modified courses, and be shared with the student's education decision makers, coursework, caseworker, and other relevant parties. Why? Because transparency and communication are essential. When everyone is on the same page, the student is set up for success, and the graduation plan is set up for portability. And here's what happens once the requirements are met. Students must be allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony with their peers and receive a diploma of equal weight. There is no lesser diploma option for Act 1 students. They have the right to walk across the stage with their peers and receive the same recognition. A structured graduation plan is crucial for helping students stay on track towards earning their diploma, particularly for our students experiencing education instability. By utilizing the toolkit we're about to introduce, LEAs can create a comprehensive and proactive approach to supporting Act 1 eligible students, ensuring they graduate prepared for the next step in their education or career journey. All right, now on to the truly exciting part, walking through the Graduation Plan Toolkit. This toolkit represents months of work by our team and the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and we hope it's been designed with your needs in mind, making it easier to ensure compliance with Act 1. We're going to break down each component of the toolkit, show you how to use it, and walk through a sample that we've developed. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I promise that you'll leave with the information you need.
Yes, like Ben said, we are very excited to finally roll out the Graduation Plan Toolkit. The toolkit, again, was developed by our team at the Center for Schools and Communities in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, with students and practitioners in mind. And please note that using our specific Graduation Plan Toolkit is not required, but all Act 1 eligible students in grades 9 through 12 must be provided with a graduation plan of some kind. And that graduation plan must be included in the student's education record. And so we hope that our toolkit may make the required process of developing and implementing a graduation plan for Act 1 eligible students a bit more straightforward and accessible. So what is the Graduation Plan Toolkit? The toolkit is designed to support school entity compliance with Act 1 and is a collection of practical resources to support Act 1 graduation planning, including self-assessment materials, guidance on best practice that align with PDE's interpretation of Act 1 of 2022, and fillable templates to include student voice and support Act 1 compliance. Keep in mind that our toolkit is not a substitute for district policy or legal advice, a one-size-fits-all plan for every student, or a replacement for professional judgment, collaboration, or case-by-case decision-making. In other words, we suggest that you use your professional judgment and guidance from your LEA to establish policies and practices informed by this document, and we will discuss this more thoroughly later. We've included here some guidance from the Act 1 of 2022 Basic Education Circular. Please keep in mind that your LEA is required under Act 1 to develop practices for assessing graduation progress and assigning credits. This policy does not need to be board-approved policy, but it does need to be an established protocol so you can assign credit in a structured and fair way. Your policies and practices should meet your local needs, and we recommend that they also encompass the Act 1 best practices laid out here in our Graduation Plan Toolkit. The Graduation Plan Toolkit is intended to support the designated point of contact, or POC, within a school. All Act 1 eligible students are required to have a point of contact. The point of contact is responsible for identifying other Act 1 eligible students, gathering academic records, monitoring student progress, ensuring compliance with graduation requirements, and fostering academic success. For students in grades 9 through 12, the Act 1 point of contact for the student should complete a graduation plan for each of their Act 1 eligible students in consultation with the school counselor, school social worker, home and school visitor or school psychologist, and the student's IEP team or 504 service coordinator. Not included here is including the student voice themselves, the students themselves. The Act 1 point of contact can consider opportunities for Act 1 eligible students to discuss their own academic and post-secondary goals, their strengths, and any challenges they are experiencing as they navigate their education journey. Here is a list of the components that we have included in our Act 1 Graduation Plan Toolkit. These categories are recommended inclusions for student graduation planning and can help ensure compliance with Act 1. These sections also ensure that all documentation and decision-making is kept in the student's record in the case of possible future education instability. And we will walk you through each category during this presentation. Under Act 1 of 2022, school entities must ensure that students receive full or partial credit for all satisfactorily completed coursework, regardless of the issuing school entity, and this includes residential facilities. A thorough investigation and evaluation of students' academic work can ensure that education disruptions do not become graduation barriers. This resource outlines the process of how coursework from prior schools and placements can be credited in full or in part toward local requirements. And we've broken this down for you in 6 easy steps. So step 1, collect documentation. Start by first gathering all available transcripts, course descriptions, and other evidence of learning, such as projects, assessments, or internships. During your collection process, consider various potential sources for documentation, like prior schools, residential placements, shelter providers, and child welfare agencies. In the second step, you'll identify equivalencies. So you'll take a look at the documents you've collected and begin comparing course titles and content to local curriculum standards. Keep in mind, courses with dissimilar titles may in fact have aligned standards. In the example that Ben gave earlier, mythology, a course called mythology from a previous school, might satisfy the English 9 requirement if the content aligns. Step 3, awarding credit. Again, using your collected transcripts and other documents, you can begin awarding and mapping out credits. Where the course content and outcomes match local requirements, assign full credit. Full credit should be granted for any courses that students successfully complete. Where courses were only partially completed due to education instability, assign partial credit. If only portions of a course meet the local requirements, clearly document what is missing and the steps to be taken to meet the requirements to obtain full credit. Step 4, alternative assessments. If you note unmatched coursework or gaps in coursework, you might consider alternative assessments like essays, special projects, presentations, or competency tests to demonstrate proficiency of content. Consider the possibility of experiential learning, higher level coursework, work experience, and internships as possibly filling a course or graduation requirement. And again, the students themselves are helpful consultants and can provide insight into their academic histories and help us think through alternative assessments to demonstrate their competence. Step 5, waivers. Local requirements may be waived by the chief school administrator due to experiencing educational instability, or if the student has demonstrated equivalent learning or competency, either through coursework or alternative assessments. And lastly, record keeping. Throughout the graduation plan process, be sure to take notes and explain all credit decisions in the student's graduation plan or academic record, ensuring it is incorporated into their academic records and can travel with the student in the event of future school moves. And of course, this wouldn't be a proper toolkit if we didn't provide a rubric for its use. This rubric outlines the most thoughtful implementation of this particular toolkit, but it also offers a standardized way to assess the thoroughness and quality of each student's graduation plan, ensuring consistency and adherence to Act 1 of 2022. In other words, this rubric can be used for any graduation plan template because it encompasses our suggested best practices and ensures compliance with Act 1.
So now let's dive into the Act 1 graduation plan form itself. Meg has walked us through a number of resources that we've included in the toolkit, but this is the centerpiece of that toolkit, the actual document that you can use to guide students through the graduation planning process. The form is organized into sections that align with Act 1 requirements and best practices, and each section serves a specific purpose in creating a comprehensive, actionable plan for the student. We've designed this form to be comprehensive, capturing all the information that you need in one place, portable so it can travel with the student if they experience future school changes, student-centered by incorporating student voice and goals, and compliance forward, ensuring that you meet all Act 1 requirements. As we walk through each section, I encourage you to think about how you'll use this within your own context. What information do you already have access to? What will you need to gather? And who will you need to collaborate with? To make this as practical as possible, we're going to walk through a sample graduation plan together. You'll note that we've included the slides in the top corner, and this is a sample demonstration to show best practices for using the Act 1 graduation plan template. It's based on a fictional student who we've determined is enrolling mid-year in 9th grade and shows how the form guides planning from enrollment all the way to graduation. You can follow along separately, or if you'd like, just watch the screen. And as we go through, I'll point out key decision points, common challenges, and tips for making the process a bit smoother. Think of this as your guided tour through the graduation planning process. Now, again, mentioning that we've listed a number of best practices throughout this presentation, and those correspond directly to points you'll find throughout the graduation plan toolkit, including suggested graduation plan components, credit assessment guidance in those steps that Megan walked us through earlier, and the rubric for complete Act 1 of 2022 graduation planning assessment. Think of this as a bit of a fidelity of implementation study for yourself. So beginning on page 10, you'll find a list of who should be included in the Act 1 graduation planning process and details for how to use the form. Noting that within pages 10 through 12, you'll see that students sample information for just educational purposes. And you'll see extra callouts that aren't found in our grade level graduation planning workbooks. So let's begin with the first section, additional consultants. This section asks you to identify who else needs to be at the table developing the graduation plan. Act 1 specifically mentions consultation with school counselors, school social workers, home and school visitors or school psychologists, and for students with disabilities, the IEP team or 504 service coordinator. But we encourage you not to stop there. Think about who else may have valuable insight into the student's academic journey, including previous teachers who may know the student's learning style, a caseworker or foster care liaison, a juvenile probation officer, a mentor or advocate, and, most importantly, the student themselves and their parent or guardian. And document everyone involved. This creates a record of collaboration and ensures everyone is accountable for supporting the student's success. Next up, academic history. This is where you document all previous schools attended, dates of attendance, and courses completed. This is a bit of detective work, but it is essential. Your goal here is to create the most complete picture possible of the student's academic journey. That will include gathering transcripts from all previous schools, documenting residential placement, learning experiences, records from alternative education settings, and anything that shows what the student has learned. Sometimes this information may come easily, and other times you'll need to make phone calls or send multiple requests, piecing together fragments of information. However, we remind you that it's worth the effort. A complete academic history allows you to accurately assess what credit the student has earned and what they still need. Without it, you're not able to fully implement a graduation planning process.
So, one of our tips for completing academic history is to note that it is important to gather and retain all academic records for an Act 1 student. Gathering all academic records will assist with knowing where students should be appropriately placed and what local requirements students have met or still need support in meeting.
Once you've gathered all that academic history, it's time for credit mapping. Credit mapping is a process where you align the student's prior coursework with local graduation requirements. You're essentially creating a side-by-side comparison, saying, here's what we've done, here's what we require, and where can that match up? For each local requirement, document whether the student has completed equivalent coursework, what credit, either full or partial, they've earned, and what potential gaps will remain. Be thorough, and we also encourage you to be generous. Remember the cross-credit recognition principle. Course doesn't need to have the same title or even same content to count. Look at the standards covered, the learning outcomes, and the content itself. This credit mapping becomes the foundation for the rest of the graduation plan. So it shows where the student is starting from and clarifies that path forward.
Here's another tip while you're credit mapping. Refer to PDE's standards aligned system when reviewing a student's coursework. This is a helpful practice to explore alternative coursework or means of demonstrating competency by linking local standards with past experiences and coursework.
And now we move to required courses and alternative options. This section identifies how each graduation requirement will be met. For each requirement, you'll specify whether the student will complete a traditional course, complete an alternative or modified course, demonstrate competency through an alternative assessment, or have the requirement waived, or any combination of the four. This is where your professional judgment comes into play. You're balancing rigor and flexibility, ensuring the student meets meaningful standards while removing unnecessary barriers. For any alternative options, we ask that you be specific. Don't just write alternative assessment. Write, student will demonstrate Algebra 1 competency through completion of a project-based assessment, focusing on real-world applications of linear equations. The more specific you are, the clearer the path forward becomes for you, the student, and anyone else who reviews this plan. Skipping a bit ahead, we're going to look at additional requirements. And this is where you document anything beyond the core coursework within a 4-year planned graduation timeline. And this is anything that's required for graduation in your district or LEA that may go beyond just coursework. This might include community service hours, keystone exams or other assessments, senior projects or portfolios, career readiness requirements, financial literacy courses, or for students who don't necessarily fall within that 4-year timeline for graduation, this may include further requirements for them as well. So for these students, think carefully about whether these requirements can be met through alternative means or need to be waived due to education instability. The law does give you flexibility here, so it's a great opportunity to use it thoughtfully. Next, we're going to address graduation pathway and target date. You'll note that we have two kinds of graduation pathway here, as Act 1 does provide specific pathways for students to reach their timely graduation, in addition to Act 158 graduation pathways related to Keystone proficiency. And Pennsylvania offers 5 pathways to graduation under Act 158, and Act 1 eligible students do have access to all of them. So just noting that these pathways may include Keystone proficiency or composite proficiency, alternative assessments, evidence-based pathways, IEP goal completion, and career and technical education concentrators. So identify which pathway or pathways the student is pursuing and set a target graduation date that's realistic and aligned with the student's progress. The target date might be earlier than the traditional 4-year timeline if the student has accumulated sufficient credits, or it may need to be extended if the student would traditionally need more time to meet requirements, and that's okay. The goal is timely graduation for an individual student, not just forcing each student into the same mold. Next, you'll note we have student goals and interests, and this is one of my favorite sections. This is where we bring a bit of the student's voice into the plan by asking them, what are your academic goals? What do you want to do after high school? What interests you? What are your strengths and talents? What challenges are you facing or have you faced in your education? And this isn't just nice to have, it's essential. When students see their own goals reflected in their plans, they are more invested in achieving them. When they have a voice in the process, they become partners in their own success. Document their responses here and let those goals inform the rest of the plan. Say, if a student wants to pursue nursing, maybe we prioritize science-related courses and connect them with healthcare internships. If they're interested in the trades, maybe exploring career and technical education options would be most appropriate. Simply meet the student where they are and go from there, helping them get where they want to go. Progress checkpoints are how you ensure the plan stays on track. Establish regular check-in dates throughout the school year, perhaps quarterly or even once a semester, to review the student's progress, address any potential challenges, and adjust the plan as needed. These checkpoints create accountability for all involved. They're opportunities to celebrate progress, troubleshoot problems, and keep everyone focused on the goal. Document what was discussed at each checkpoint and any changes made to the plan. This creates a living document that evolves with the student's journey. Now we're going to look at in full the student self-assessment and expression of goals. This is where we take the student's voice even further. This section provides space for students to reflect on their own progress and express their thoughts about their education. In this, you may ask, what's going well for you in school right now? What's challenging? What support do you need? And what are you proud of accomplishing? This self-assessment can be revisited at different points throughout the student's journey, including progress checkpoints, allowing them to track their own growth over time. And it sends a powerful message. Your thoughts and your experiences matter, and your perspective is valued. You're not just a passive recipient of services, but an active participant in your own education. Recording changes is exactly what it sounds like. We understand that graduation plans aren't static. They're changing as circumstances evolve, as students make progress, and new needs emerge. Each time you make a change to the plan, whether that's awarding additional credit, adjusting a requirement, changing a target graduation date, or anything else, document it in the graduation plan. Include the date of the change, what was changed, why it was changed, who approved the change, and by doing all of this, you'll create an audit trail and ensure continuity if there's turnover in staff or if the student moves to another school entity. Okay, so you've developed a comprehensive graduation plan. Now what? How do you actually implement it? Here in the toolkit, we've listed a few of the key steps. Ensure prompt placement by not letting students sit in limbo while you figure out their schedule. Request and review academic history by beginning to gather records immediately. Develop the graduation plan, hopefully using this toolkit or using it to inspire the creation of a comprehensive and individualized plan. Develop regular checkpoints by building them in as monitoring points, just as we discussed. Record any changes and document them in the student's academic record. Keep those thorough records of all decisions and changes. Offer flexibility with rigor by finding creative ways to meet standards without creating unnecessary barriers. Connect and collaborate with other relevant stakeholders to support the student's success. And implementation isn't going to be a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of monitoring, adjusting, and supporting the student all the way through to graduation. And before we move on, let's cover a few additional considerations that are critical to understand. Being special education, noting that, again, Act 1 does not abridge a student's right to special education services or their right to graduate through credit acquisition or the completion of IEP goals. Students who have IEPs may remain in school through age 21, even if Act 1 offers an earlier pathway to graduation. Additionally, all school-mandated and extracurricular fees should be waived for Act 1 eligible students. And finally, once students complete all of the required graduation, all of the graduation requirements, they should be afforded the same opportunity to participate in the graduation ceremony with their peers and receive a diploma of equal weight. And just a quick compliance review on this page. We like to point out how you can review any graduation plan for its compliance with the law, including the recognition of partial and full credit for academic work completed, offering alternative methods to demonstrate competency, identifying the student's Act 1 graduation pathway, and ensuring that they receive adequate resources to meet the Act 158 graduation pathway. And finally, ensuring that the target graduation date, whether earlier or later than a traditional timeline, facilitates that timely graduation without compromising academic quality.
So, in addition to today's training, we wanted to also offer you some resources to get in touch with us about Act 1 of 2022. So first, you can follow this QR code or the bit.ly link there to access the Graduation Plan Toolkit that we walked through with you today. It's also available on our Act 1 of 2022 webpage. Here is a list of 2 email addresses we encourage you to use on your Act 1 journey. The first is for any Keystone Diploma and general questions, and the second will go to us to request technical assistance and training. You can also email us directly at our individual emails. Our team at the Center for Schools and Communities is poised to assist you in your Act 1 of 2022 needs. Please reach out to us anytime, and thank you so much for joining our training today.